Thank you very much for inviting me to make this presentation. I'm speaking here as an advisor to Kudarti Kheti Abhiyan Haryana. Kudarti Kheti Abhiyan Haryana is a voluntary group, unregistered, informal kind of a group, which has been working for promotion of self-reliant organic farming in Haryana since 2009. Professionally, I was a professor of economics in MD University, Rohtak, Haryana. I took voluntary retirement and have been working with farmers in a voluntary capacity as a trainer. Now, people who come to organic farming come for various reasons and for various purposes. Some for health reasons, some who for whom their main profession is not farming. They are doing it for health reasons, maybe also for commercial reasons, but they are not dependent on farming per se. My experience and experience of Kudarti Kheti Abhiyan Haryana is basically working with those farmers who are surviving on farming. So that's my limited perspective from which I have been working for last so many years, and I would whatever I share will come from that perspective. Now, if you're working with farmers who are dependent on agriculture for their survival, then, and because it was a voluntary group without any funding, without anything, we were not in a position to afford any marketing support either. So if you're not able to provide any marketing support, not able to provide any financial help, then targeting equivalent yield from the day one was our goal. It was imperative for a farmer who's surviving on agriculture, is not getting any marketing support, no financial support, then he or she would shift to organic farming only if it is profitable. And without marketing support, to make organic farming profitable, you have to target equivalent yield. That's one thing. Second perspective, part of our perspective was that it has to be self-reliant farming. We were just providing training, and the farmers were spread all over Haryana. So we could not provide even any other input support either. So we perforce were forced to focus on self-reliant organic farming. So that is the perspective from which I would be speaking. My experience is based on that. Now, first thing I learned was that usually people think that once they've stopped usage of chemical, then that's all. Organic farming is done. Stoppage of chemicals is a minimum requirement. That's a confining organic farming to stoppage of chemicals is a very narrow view of organic farming. But if you want to have a good yield, equivalent yield or better yield than chemical farming, then you can't just stop at stopping the use of chemicals, all kinds of chemicals, and continuing agriculture as it is. But this is what actually happened initially. For many years, in our training, we would mention all kinds of changes, but farmers would practically would stop chemicals, but their other agronomic practices would continue as they were. And we were not getting good results. The yields were not comparable. For at least wheat, which was the benchmark crop for Haryana. For some of the crops, the yields were comparable to begin with also. But for wheat, which is the benchmark crop for Haryana, the yields were not comparable. In due course, slowly, we learned that organic is much beyond stoppage of chemicals. Before I proceed further, I would like to make two preliminary points, and then I would go on to other learnings that we had. One, non-chemical farming, alternative farming is known by various names. There are various promoters, trainers emphasizing different methods of non-chemical farming. We call ourselves as Kudarti Kheti Abhiyan in English, which would mean natural farming campaign. But we also call ourselves, or the kind of farming we promote, we call it self-reliant organic farming. To our mind, self-reliant organic farming, not dependent much on external inputs, and natural farming is one and the same thing. But anyway, whichever name you use, and if you go into the details, some 90-95% of all the promoters and trainers are suggesting is common. Just in couple of methods, in couple of things, 2%, 4%, 5%, there may be differences. So whatever I speak would be in terms of self-reliant organic farming. Now, as consumers, many consumers are aware of residue problem, that chemicals used in the farming end up on our food table, end up in the food that we use and eat. I also initially knew only that much. But in due course, I realized that even if residue problem is taken care of, if there are no residues, but the fact of the matter is that nutritional composition of food has deteriorated over time. National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad, in India, and the world over, in Britain, USA, similar bodies, every decade or 2 decades, undertake nutritional analysis of the food that is being consumed in those countries. And in India also, the data is available from 1930s to recent decades. And surprising point is that nutritional composition of food, ignoring the residue part, is going down. That means oranges don't have that kind of a vitamin C which oranges had in my grandmother's time. Carrots don't have the kind of vitamin A which they had in my grandparents' time. And maybe my grandchildren would face even worse situation. So organic farming from consumer perspective is not just to get rid of harmful residues, but organic farming also gets the consumers the more nutritious food. This is something I learned on the job. I didn't know it when I started working on organic farming. So that's something which we need to keep in mind, that it is not just a question of residues, but it's a question of nutritional composition. And no wonder we have these food supplements, fortified foods, and now even government trying to make fortification compulsory. If the food, natural food, the food grown in the farm is not nutritious enough, only then you need to go for food supplements and fortification and things like that. Okay. So for health purposes, if you are going for organic farming, not looking at it as an economic endeavor, then maybe you can continue with the narrow vision of organic farming, stopping chemicals and let the nature do whatever it happens, and whatever yield you get, that would be healthy enough. But if you are surviving on agriculture and doing organic agriculture for survival also, then you have to undertake so many other agronomical changes. These are simple changes, but so many other agronomical changes have to be undertaken. Only then the yield would be comparable. So there is a narrow vision of organic farming, and there is a broader holistic vision of organic farming. Just to illustrate few points. Broader holistic organic farming can't be monoculture. It can't be single crop based. Except maybe for paddy, though advanced organic farmers, more experienced organic farmers do not do only paddy. Even in paddy, they undertake so many other, along with paddy, in the same field, they produce so many other kinds of foods. But for us in Haryana, except for paddy, we say that it should be mixed and multiple crop. these crops support each other in various ways. I will not go into details of it, but just to point out that there are changes which have to be, agronomical practices have to be changed to get good yield under organic conditions. Secondly, obviously, farmyard manure or compost has to be used. But at least I know of Haryana, and I'm sure it might be similar in other parts of the country also. The method, traditional method of farmyard manure, the way the cow dung or animal excreta is composted and used in as a soil amendment is not really correct. About Haryana, I'm very sure, but I'll give you a test and you can check if that's the way in your place also. In Haryana, the traditional age-old method, whenever they pick farmyard manure for transporting into the farm, it's hot. They say it burns their feet. If it's hot, then it is not composting. Then it is not really compost. It is undecomposed cow dung that you're using. So from such simple things as improving the methods of composting, simple methods of composting without any external inputs, it's just a matter of how you do it. It's a more of a knowledge intensive thing rather than input intensive thing. Another example, simple change, is the way we irrigate our fields. In Haryana, generally agriculture farms get electricity at night. So everyday farmer cannot remain awake and irrigate his fields, his or her fields. So what they have practiced as it has evolved is that they have a huge plots, 1 acre, even more than 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre long plots, so that at night the tubal is switched on and it continues throughout the night. From one end of the long plot, irrigation plot, to other end of the long irrigation plot, it's a couple of hours. In chemical farming, maybe no harm is done, because in chemical farming, soil is even otherwise dead. That is why that's the main problem with chemical farming. But for organic farming, to stop killing of microorganisms by stopping the use of chemicals, but then drowning them by having open flood irrigation over large plots of farm, is not done. But this we learned the hard way. Initially, we mentioned all these things in our trainings, in our booklet that we published in 2010. But neither we were emphasizing these aspects equally importantly, giving them adequate emphasis. We mentioned them, they were there in our book. They were mentioned in our trainings also, but they were not hammered. And farmers also neither were convinced of its desirability nor of its feasibility. They thought that mixed cropping is not possible. How can you have more than one crop in one plot? And where is the need for, such like things, mixed cropping and small plot irrigation, etc., etc. So they questioned both desirability and feasibility. And for them, most of the times, stopping of chemicals was the end of organic farming. But our yields were not coming up to the point. Then we went on exposure visit to Maharashtra and Gujarat. And in that exposure visit, our farmers, and it was a self-financed exposure visit, as we don't have any fund. All farmers paid from their own pocket for the exposure visit. They were surprised to see that the crops were good, no worse than under chemical farming. And what they thought was not feasible, mixed cropping, and so many other changes, agronomical practices that we were suggesting, the farmers were adopting it. So they realized it was desirable as well as feasible. And that's when they started doing it in their own farms also slowly. And few farmers started adopting the larger view of organic farming, where the whole set of agronomical practices undergo changes. Irrigation is one thing, mixed cropping and composting methods, and there are few other things also. And their yield started improving. So much so that in 2021, we held a public hearing where data from farmers was presented. 2021 was immediately after the Corona period. So it was a telephonic interview. But prior to that, in 2019, pre-Corona period, it was a mixed. With some farmers, we had face-to-face meeting, farm visits, and for some farmers, we had telephonic interviews. And to our surprise, about 100 farmers, or 45% of the total sample, were getting better than state average yield in wheat. Wheat is the benchmark crop for Haryana. So we focused on Haryana, on wheat, because it is a benchmark crop. And secondly, on telephonic interview, you cannot do a very detailed analysis. So we focused on one crop. And it was the most problematic crop. For paddy and for many other crops, even earlier we were getting comparable yield, but not for wheat. To our surprise, about 100 farmers, 98 to be exact, and 45% of the sample were getting better than average yield as per Haryana government publicly available data. And to those who are not statistically minded, let me clarify that around 50% only can be above average. That is that's statistically not possible that you have 100% above average. So 45% farmers were able to get better than state average yields. So the first learning, an important learning, is that stopping chemicals is the easier part of the job. You have to make so many other agronomical changes. Practices have to change. And for that, learning is important. So we suggest to the farmers, don't convert whole of your land holdings in one go. Convert a small plot of your, stop chemical usage on small plot of your land. Adopt all agronomical changes, all recommended practices of organic farming. Get comparable yield, and then extend the yield. So that's one learning. And second learning we emphasize is, begin with the crops that you are familiar with. Cropping pattern needs to change, no doubt about it. But to begin with, farmer must begin with seeds and crops and varieties which he or she is familiar with, which have been performing well in his or her area, in village. So these 2-3 things we emphasize to begin with. Another important point that we learned as we journeyed was that most of the time people are looking for silver bullets, one-shot solutions. Somebody is promoting decomposer, somebody is promoting Jivamrit, somebody is promoting some other composition, and farmers are also looking for silver bullet solutions. And the harsh learning is that there are no silver bullet solutions. There are broad principles which are almost universally valid. But to your location, to your environment, to your life situations, you would have to innovate, learn by doing it. Principles are almost universal, and there is almost unanimity, except a few points here and there. But methods have to be location specific. You have to work in your own environment, in your situation. You would have to devise methods of doing that. For example, when we did not have any experience in Haryana, we looked at the experience from south. So they were Panchgavya. In south, perhaps cows are as yet common, but in north, for farmers, it's buffaloes which are common now. Cows are rare. So, or there were other concoctions which had coconut and certain other ingredients. Gliricidia is used as a biomass generating crop in South India, but Gliricidia doesn't work in North India. Coconut is not there in North India. So that is by understanding the principle, understanding the science of organic farming, and then innovating, adopting under your own life situation is a farmer has to do. Another important thing to keep in mind is that for chemical farming, because most people are doing chemical farming, you don't have to do advanced planning. You only need to have money and you can go to the market and buy the things. But for self-reliant organic farming, you have to do advanced planning. Farmers who are doing organic farming want to plant cotton. They would not get desi or non-BT cotton seed easily. They have to plan in advance. It's not just that you have money and you go to the market and get the things done. So advanced planning has to be there. And organic farming is for those farmers who are able to devote their time to farm. It needs continuous attention because it's mixed cropping. There are multiple crops. Some crop is being sown, some crop is being harvested, some crop is in the flowering stage, so on and so forth. So it requires year-long attention. It is not good for organic farming is not for absentee farmers. And one short training also does this. Though in Haryana we could not do the hand holding and mainly relied on one shot training, but we also realize that one shot training is not sufficient. Farmer needs long-term hand holding. And in this context, exposure visits, interaction amongst farmers are the most beneficial thing. Farmers visiting other farms, learning from their experiences is the most important thing. And that is how our movement in Haryana progressed. Some farmers adopted the broader view of those who had gone on farmers visit to Maharashtra and Gujarat. They learned, they started practicing those things, their yields improved. Other farmers visited those farms and then they were able to learn those things. So farmer interaction and field visit exposure is the most important thing. Lastly, I would say, if in Haryana, the hotbed of so-called green revolution, intensive farming, if comparable yield is possible, if self-reliant organic farming is possible, then I believe it's possible anywhere in the country. Of course, there are soil climatic conditions. I have known the best of organic farmers, even trained agriculture scientists converted into organic farmers with long years of experience have noted that for particular crops, it doesn't suit. Their soil, their climate conditions is not suitable for a particular crop. So why insist on taking that crop only? There are hundreds of other crops. So for some particular crop, in my own kitchen garden, I have a small, only a kitchen garden in my urban house. I have noticed that some crops do well, some vegetables don't do well. So why should I insist on taking those vegetables which don't do well in my soil conditions and my local conditions? So if we take that into account, it is possible that organic farming, self-reliant organic farming is possible in all over the country. And it need not be limited, as right now the government or the agriculture establishment is limiting it to niche areas, unirrigated areas, forest areas, Adivasi areas, and excluding the so-called green revolution belt areas. No. If organic farming is to move, if the whole country has to have nutritious and safe food, if environment is to be protected, if health is to be protected, then these intensively farmed areas of Haryana, Punjab, or other in other states also there are such intensively farmed areas where chemicals have been used in a huge amounts. They have to convert, and our experience shows that it is possible to convert even those areas into organic farming. We have done it without any government help, without any financial support. If uh, governments were to help, if agriculture departments were to help, then this would be moving at a much faster pace. Right now, it is farmer-driven initiative, which is moving ahead. The speed is slow, but backtracking are few and far between. I think so. I have almost completed my uh, allotted time of 30 minutes. And mm, so I can now take questions or any other things that you wish to have. I would end up by saying that chemical-free farming is need of the hour or long delayed thing that we need to take up for health reasons, for environmental reasons, and for job creation. Organic farming uses much more labor. In a country where unemployment rates are high, where labor intensive agriculture should be a welcome thing. Self-reliant villages, and that is the kind of farming we have been promoting. No external input, not dependent on external inputs. If you don't have animals, if you can't keep animals, you would have to buy inputs from outside. But self-reliant organic farming can realize the dream of Mahatma Gandhi of self-reliant villages. And that is the main reason I, an economist, trained economist, a teacher of economics, experimented with agriculture to see if that kind of a thing was possible. And my experience in Haryana shows that this is possible. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful talk. I will take up the questions now. The first question is, how do organic farmers manage soil fertility without synthetic fertilizers?
Recycle whatever the agriculture biomass, except food that you are producing, which has to be sold. Everything else must be recycled. No burning, no even selling of biomass for electricity generation or for industrial use. Recycle the biomass, compost properly. In India, I looked at the government data. The number of buffaloes and cows in India are almost equal to the number of area under agriculture in India. So for each acre of land, there is one cattle, almost one cattle or one cow, one buffalo or one cow that is available. And if we take into account sheep, goats, donkeys, and horses, then 1.5 animals are available for 1 acre of land. So if the whole country were to convert to organic farming, then compost, adequate amount of compost would be potentially available. And then improve your composting. Right now, the composting methods are not good. And thirdly, green manuring, mixed green manuring. Whenever it is possible, there is a gap of 30-40 days, do mixed green manuring. So these are the three important things. recycle your biomass, compost properly, and mixed green manuring, and crop mix. No monoculture. These are adequate. And of course, initially, because your soil is dead, practically dead, there are no microorganisms. So principal focus has to be on increasing the number of microorganisms in your soil. And for that purposes, first step is stopping the chemicals, and then some Jivamrit-like applications, Amrit Pani, Jivamrit-like some inputs have to be put in, and that would increase the number of microorganisms in your soil. You recycle the biomass, and the soil fertility will increase.
Okay. Now, what are some of the common organic farming techniques for pest and disease management?
Okay. Actually, once the soil health improves, pest, and you stop usage of chemicals, your friend insects, we think of all insects as farmers' enemies. But insects are also various kinds. There are herbivorous insects, and there are what we would call non-vegetarian insects. Now, non-vegetarian insects are actually farmers' friends. So, two things: you improve your soil health, you stop usage of chemicals, you do mixed cropping. Mixed cropping also helps in pest control, because each insect has its own favorite food, and if it's a monocropping, it continues to eat and grow and develop. But if it's mixed cropping, there are various kinds of smells around, and these insects are small insects. So mixed cropping is also a way of pest control. Improved soil health is also a way of pest control. But still, if there are pest control, then there are broadly two kinds of problems that farmers face. One is a fungal attack. Various kinds of fungus diseases come up. For that, sour buttermilk is a very good remedy, best antifungal thing that is possible. We have a booklet in Hindi, and I am sure there are no dearth of material in English. There would be a lot of material in English, but in Hindi we have a manual we have prepared where details of these methods are given. I can provide the link for this Hindi manual. So buttermilk, how to use those things are there, and if you want, I can explain those things in detail. And other pest attacks other than fungal attacks. So there are also biomass-based pest repellents are available or can be prepared at home, and they can be used. If you want me to explain some of those methods, I can do that. But another important step is half the diseases are come from the seed itself. So if your seed is of good quality and you take preventive steps before sowing these seeds, there are methods of seed treatment, organic methods of seed treatment. In chemical farming also, seeds are treated by chemical methods, but for organic farming, there are organic methods of seed treatments. So if you do the seed treatment, half the problems are taken care of that time itself. Then soil health takes care of some other set of problems. Mixed cropping takes other set of insects. And still, if there are problems, then there are organic methods, self-reliant organic methods, kitchen-based organic method, which can be used.
Okay. What role do government policies and regulations play in promoting organic farming?
Well, actually, they have not been promoting it. Mainstream agriculture institutions have not been really promoting it. In 2001, there was a Government of India appointed committee which had recommended, that report had recommended that at least 50% of the land under government farms or agriculture university farms should be devoted to chemical farming, and other 50% should be devoted to organic farming or non-chemical farming. This recommendation has not been followed up till date. This particular government, Modi government, in its first term, had appointed a task force on organic farming. Its report has not been released yet, though it was submitted long back. I, as an economist, can appreciate the point of agriculture scientists. For an economist who has from +2 stage onwards been trained in market economy and graduation, post-graduation, PhD, to think in terms of non-market solutions to economic problems is difficult. Similarly, agriculture scientists, after their schooling onwards, they have been trained in chemical methods only. And for them to shift to non-chemical methods or think in terms of non-chemical methods is difficult. Though there is an institute in Modipuram. Modipuram is next to Delhi. ICR, it's an ICR Institute of Farming Systems Research Institute. Under this, since 2004, in 16 states and 20 centers, comparative trials have been done. Chemical farming, organic farming, and mixed of chemical and organic farming. Its own data, ICR's own data shows that except for initial decline for 2 or 3 years, the yield is better under organic farming. But unfortunately, the same report which says that the yield is better and 18 crops are listed where the yield is better, yet the policy recommendation is do it for promote organic farming for niche areas, for unirrigated areas, for tribal areas, and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, not much is being done by government on this. And whatever little is being done is now being divided between organic and natural farm. There is a conflict between organic and natural farm. Separate standards are being promoted for natural farming, separate certification regime, etc., etc.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yes, sir, you finish it, sir.
No, it's okay. I mean, that's
I'll move
okay.
on to the next question, sir. What are the biggest challenges you have faced as an organic farming trainer?
Well, one is technical and one is non-technical. Technical problem that still remains is treatment of weeds. Under chemical farming, weeds are very easily treatable. I mean, you spend 400-500, you spray the weedicide, and the problem is overcome. Under organic farming, weeds are much less. But if weeds are there, then there is no spray, no except physically removing the weeds. There is no other. As yet, to my knowledge, there is no other method of weed treatment. So one major issue on which farmers have to spend money is on weed control. Though it's not uncontrollable. I mean, if you compost it properly, if you sow it in rows and don't broadcast the seeds, then even the cost of weed treatment becomes less. But still, it's one major problem that we still face. That's a technical problem. And the non-technical problem is organic farmer or chemical farmer. Farmer as such has to compete with other sources of earning income and livelihood and social status. There, a small farmer with 2 or 3 acres of land cannot compete with a property dealer or a businessman or somebody with the government job. So agriculture, even if it is organic agriculture, unless the social dynamics changes, would not be a preferred choice of farmer's son or daughter.
Okay. Can you share some success stories from your trainees, sir?
Well, what do you mean by success stories? The number of farmers is going.
Yeah,
The
yeah, who
number of
have done.
farmers is going up. There are no backtracking except couple of them, and they start with small part of their land holding, and then about more than 100 or 200 farmers have converted whole of their land holdings to organic farming. And if it is done without any financial support, if it is done without any marketing support, it implies that it is a successful, it's profitable. And we are, as I said, we are working with farmers who are dependent on farming income for their survival. It is not that they have earned their money in a multinational corporation and now they are into some kind of farming. There was a particular farmer who had just 3 acres of his land. Then he asked me, I am able to lease some land next to my farm. Should I lease the land? Leasing is generally for 1 year, so that's not a good option for conversion. In his case, he said that I have negotiated it for 5 years. I would get lease for at least for 5 years. So should I convert it? At that point of time, I also was under the impression that it would take 3 years for conversion to take place, and he's getting additional land for just 5 years. So what is the point of getting uh, leasing the land and doing organic farming? The farmer told me this 3 years that is the common perception is for learning purposes. Soil doesn't need 3 years to regenerate itself. Farmer may need 3 years to learn. I have learned for last 8, 9 years. I have been doing it on my own land. I have learned everything. So in my lease land, I would do it in the very first year. I would get good yield. And he has done it successfully. And fortunately for him, the 5 year period is over, but the lease has been extended. So every last last Sunday of the month, because so many farmers started visiting his farm. So on last Sunday of the month, he keeps an open house. And even in January or December, which is a peak winter season for Haryana, about 50 to 100 farmers visit his farm every month.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone interested in starting an organic farm?
Well, there can be two kinds of people who are interested in starting organic farm. Those who know farming, chemical farming, and want to convert to organic farm. But maybe most of the English speaking people would be such that they don't know farming and want to start an organic farm. So their outlines would be very different. To urban people moving who have no personal knowledge and experience of organic farming, I would suggest that they should tie up with the chemical farming, at least as an advisor, because no organic farming training would tell you which soil is good for which kind of crop, which season, when is the crop to be sown, etc., etc. So they need to have a hand holding sport of a. They need to have both knowledge of organic methods and principles, as well as the basic knowledge of farming, which chemical farmer has by default. But for chemical farmer who wish to shift to organic farming, our advice is to begin with small portion of land. Don't convert your whole land holding into organic in one go. Whatever you can risk, I would say, for 2, 3 years, and stick to it for at least 2, 3 years. One season, one crop, you don't get good results, don't stop it. And learn all the methods of organic farming. Visit other organic farmers. Now, a lot of YouTube material is also available, and many times it is useful. Sometimes there may be exaggeration also, but one can make a sense of it. Basic principles remain the same, and farmers must um, start a transition with a small portion of their land.
Okay. I have done with the questions from my side, sir. We have one participant, our well-known member, Mr. Joseph Brito, with us. Mr. Brito, if you would like to ask any question, you can unmute your mic and ask.
Thank you, Dhanalakshmi, madam.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rajinder Chaudhary, for a very well researched program.
Welcome.
Yeah. And here in South India, the major crops are millets like sorghum. That is, here in South India, the major crops are millets like sorghum or bajra and paddy, pulse crops, sugarcane, chili, and ragi. Ragi is also a millet. So, what any difference in your line of approach for South India? Anything? Any?
Actually, we have learned from South India.
Yeah.
In South India, South and Central India, organic farming started much earlier than we started. We started in Haryana in only in 2009 as
Yeah.
our group. And
Yes.
so for all crops, for all kinds of soil conditions, organic farming is possible and appropriate. As I said, basic principles remain the same.
Absolutely.
Now, the kind of crop mix. Now, I can give examples only from North India. I can't give
Yes.
examples from South India. The kind of, if you are
Crop
not to
mix.
do monocropping, then what kind of a crop mix is possible? I'm sure in South India, I mean, there are many more organizations and many more groups which are
Yes.
doing it.
Yes, you're right, quite right. Especially in Karnataka, there's a lot of encouragement for organic farming, and farmers have mixed crops. Like, for example, with sorghum, they grow pulse crops, or even with wheat, they grow pulse crops. So, all these things are in advanced stage. But as you rightly pointed out, there is still that lack of government support, which is uh, not there for organic farmers, and which is there for conventional farming, where the subsidy runs into thousands of crores. Of course, the government is aware of this, but it has not yet taken any major steps. It is only saying, yes, yes, organic farming is good, and it is, especially after COVID, it has realized that organic farming is better than conventional. So the start is there, but the push has to be given in a very big way. There are of course organizations like NACOF and even the encouragement of the use of this, what do you call that, decomposer. It has not been encouraged. It has actually been it has almost been I would say stopped, no. And we don't hear much of Dr. Chandran, who was the
You are right.
initial thing, and it was only 20 rupees initially. Now
That's
it has been hijacked, and the cost is 200. Sometimes they're charging 500 rupees, and even at
because
that
the
price,
government has stopped supplying it.
ah,
Government has outsourced it. That is the
outsourced it.
problem. You know, they spent so many years, so much energy on promoting it, and now
Yes,
it's not available.
it's not available. You
Yeah,
will be
so that's a
surprised.
problem.
Yeah, yeah,
And but I would say I would add one more point
yes,
that organic farming is getting lip support from government, but
yes,
unfortunately, farmers' organizations are also not for it.
not
They
for
are
it.
also they are not supporting it. That's a bigger challenge.
That's a bigger challenge.
Because unless
See,
farmers' organizations take up this and farmers at large believe that this
yes,
is the way to go, only
yes,
then the government can be pressurized to do it. That's
yes,
unfortunate part.
yes, and like you said, this natural farming has been put in the thing. Because many experts say, what is the difference between natural and organic? And they've created confusion. So farmers prefer conventional and chemical farming, which is not correct, because there is a big difference between natural and organic farming. So they have created more confusion, and farmers are going away from organic farming. And even certification has become a big issue. Yeah. So there is no cooperation from the government side. That is the main issue. Yeah. But it is changing. It is changing, but very slowly. Uh,
social change is always difficult, and that is what our task is,
Yes.
to initiate this change.
Yes.
And when we started, as I
Yes.
said, we learned from South India, from Central India, Maharashtra, South India.
Absolutely.
We could not cite local examples, and people could not go to Karnataka or Kerala to see it for themselves.
Correct,
Now we
sir.
have been able to create local models, local. We organize field visits, and that
Yes.
is what is helping us. And I hope in due course, even farmers' organizations would come to appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Hopefully. Yeah. Now, even for exports, see, it's thanks to the European farmers and European exporters, they have, with their technical uh, knowledge, they have been able to see the residues of all these crops and the produces, So much so the exporters from India have to be very careful. So even organic certification has to be done in a very meticulous way. And the trace net will show even a small percentage of residue. So it is becoming very strict. So it's a question of time that organic farming and organic certification is going to boom in a very big way. It is the question of another 2-3 years. That's it. Yeah.
But that's a problem.
Yeah.
European farms, large, huge farms,
Huge
so
farms.
adopt same standards, same norms for a small 2-acre farms is very difficult.
Yes, sir.
There is a concept of border area. You have to leave 8 feet, 8 to 10 feet of your area around all over your farm, which cannot be
In
taken
India.
as organic. But
Yes.
how does a 1 acre or 2 acre farmer leave 8 to 10 feet all around his periphery?
Not possible. Yeah.
So, I mean, we should be focused on first and foremost for eating healthy food ourselves,
Yes.
our own citizens.
True, sir.
Export market is a later thing.
Correct, sir.
And for that, we have to take into account our local conditions.
Very true, sir. True. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajinder.
Thank you, Mr. Brito.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. We have now come to the end of the session. On behalf of agricultureinformation.com, we like to thank Dr. Rajinder Chaudhary for the talk and for answering the questions. I like to also thank all the participants in the meeting. This meeting will now be closed.
Thank you, Dhanlakshmi madam. Thank you,
You're
Doctor.
most welcome, sir.
I would just request that those listeners who are interested, the link for our Hindi booklet and an English article in mainstream, which has this data and the basic description of our work, may be provided.
We will be displaying your contact details, sir. Our members will get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine, I'll send it to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Well,
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay.